They told her she didn't belong there. A hotel manager looked at a 58-year-old black woman in a tailored navy blazer, standing at the front desk of the Harrington Grand in downtown Atlanta, and decided before she even opened her mouth that she was in the wrong place. He told her the presidential suite was unavailable. He told her there must be a mistake with her reservation. He told her to check the budget properties 2 blocks down on Peachtree. He said all of this with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, in a voice designed to make her feel small enough to simply turn around and leave. What he didn't know was that her daughter was parking the car outside. What he didn't know was that her daughter had just flown in from Okinawa. And what he certainly didn't know was that, by the time that daughter walked through those revolving doors, his career at the Harrington Grand, and every other Harrington property in the country, was going to be finished. This is the story of how a mother's dignity became a daughter's battlefield, and how one hotel manager's arrogance wrote his own termination letter. The afternoon light in Atlanta in late September still carries heat. It presses down through glass and marble like something personal. Evelyn Beaumont Osei stepped through the sliding doors of the Harrington Grand, carrying a soft leather, overnight bag, and the kind of quiet confidence that takes decades to earn. She was 58, with close-cropped silver hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She wore pressed slacks and a blazer the color of deep water. A gold pin on her lapel, a small eagle over crossed rifles, was the only thing about her that announced any kind of history. She didn't need to announce it. She walked the way people walk when they know exactly who they are. The Harrington Grand was the kind of hotel that had chandeliers in the lobby bathroom. It had a string quartet on Thursday evenings and a sommelier who could name the vineyard by the slope of the bottle. It catered to a specific clientele, and the man behind the concierge desk, General Manager Clifford Weston, had spent 11 years making sure that clientele stayed specific. Weston was 44, tan from a recent vacation, wearing a suit that probably cost more than 2 months of housekeeping wages. He had the practiced warmth of someone trained to make guests feel welcome, and the instinctive assessment of someone trained to make certain guests feel unwelcome. He clocked Evelyn Beaumont Osei the moment she stepped off the elevator from the parking lobby. He noted the overnight bag, one bag, no bellhop. He noted the silver hair. He noted the blazer, which was good, but not Chanel good. He noted everything except what mattered. "Good afternoon," Evelyn said, setting her bag by her feet. "I have a reservation. Beaumont Osei, the presidential suite, 2 nights. Weston smiled and turned to his terminal. His fingers moved over the keyboard. Then they slowed. Then they stopped. "Miss Beaumont Osei," he said, drawing out the name in a way that managed to sound both polite and dismissive. "I'm seeing a reservation here, but I'm afraid there's been a system error on our end. The presidential suite is showing as unavailable." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "That's interesting. I confirmed it 48 hours ago. My daughter made the booking 3 weeks ago. We have a confirmation number." "Of course." Weston clasped his hands on the counter. "I completely understand, and I sincerely apologize for the confusion. What I can do is place you in one of our deluxe king rooms on the 9th floor. Same building, lovely view of Centennial Park, and we'll have someone look into the suite situation." "The suite situation," Evelyn repeated slowly. "Just to sort out the system discrepancy," Weston said. "Or," Evelyn said, keeping her voice level, "you could call your suite floor coordinator and confirm whether the presidential suite is physically occupied right now, because a system error and an occupied room are 2 very different problems." Weston's smile tightened at the corners. "I assure you, ma'am, both result in the same outcome for this evening." "Ma'am," Evelyn said softly. "Not a question, just noting it." There was a woman standing nearby at the concierge podium, a junior staff member named Tara, who had been rearranging the same stack of brochures for the past 2 minutes. She wasn't moving because she was uncomfortable in the way that people get uncomfortable when they recognize something wrong but don't have the authority to name it. "I've stayed at Harrington properties 7 times in the past 3 years, Evelyn said. "I'm a Harrington Prestige member, Platinum tier. The presidential suite at this property was confirmed, prepaid, and I have the email on my phone. I understand, and again I apologize. I'd like to speak with the duty manager." "I am the duty manager," Weston said. "I'm actually the general manager of this property." "Then I'd like the regional director's contact information." Something shifted behind Weston's eyes. He recalibrated. This was the moment. The inflection point, where he could have simply called the floor coordinator, confirmed the suite was empty, which it was. It had been empty since Monday, and resolved the situation in 4 minutes. Instead, he doubled down. Ego is a remarkable thing. It makes intelligent people make catastrophic decisions. I'm not going to be able to provide regional contact information to guests, Weston said. That's against our policy. What I can do is make sure your deluxe king is complimentary for this evening, given the inconvenience, and we'll revisit the suite situation tomorrow morning. Evelyn Beaumont-Osey looked at him for a long moment. She had the look of someone who had been in rooms where actual decisions about actual lives were being made, and she was recalibrating how much energy this man was worth. She picked up her overnight bag. "I'm going to sit in your lobby," she said simply, "and wait for my daughter." She walked to a leather chair near the window, sat down, and folded her hands in her lap, with the composure of someone who had survived things that would dismantle most people. She didn't pull out her phone. She didn't look agitated. She just sat, watching the revolving doors, the afternoon light moving across the marble floor. Weston watched her from the desk. He said something to Tara that Tara pretended not to hear. Then he adjusted his lapel and went back to his computer. 14 minutes later, the revolving doors moved. The woman who walked through them was 34 years old. She was 5'10" and moved like someone who had spent years navigating spaces that required precision. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a white shirt, aviator sunglasses. But there was a geometry to how she held herself that had nothing to do with fashion. Her overnight bag was a military-grade duffel that she carried like it weighed nothing, which it probably did. Lieutenant Colonel Nia Beaumont-Osey had spent the last 8 months in Okinawa as part of a joint force advisory team. Before that, she'd done 2 rotations in the Middle East and 1 advisory assignment at the Pentagon that she was not, in certain company, permitted to discuss in detail. She was a logistics and operations officer with a record so clean it was almost offensive, and she was here for one reason. Her mother's birthday weekend, 2 nights in the presidential suite of the Harrington Grand, which she had planned and paid for 8 weeks ago, and which her mother had been looking forward to since July. She saw her mother sitting in the lobby chair. Evelyn Beaumont-Osey did not look distressed. She looked composed. But Nia had grown up reading her mother's composure the way some children learn to read weather, and what she saw in the set of her mother's jaw was the specific stillness that came not from peace, but from restraint. "Mama." Nia kissed her cheek and crouched beside the chair. "What happened?" "The suite is apparently unavailable," Evelyn said, her voice so even it was almost serene. "The general manager suggested I check somewhere 2 blocks down." Nia was quiet for 2 seconds. "He said that?" "Not in those words." "But yes." Nia straightened up. She took off her sunglasses. She walked to the front desk. Tara, the junior staff member, saw her coming. Something in Tara's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. A small exhale, like a person relieved that help might finally be arriving. "Good afternoon," Nia said to Weston. "My name is Nia Beaumont-Osey. I made a reservation for the presidential suite under my mother's name. 3 weeks ago. Confirmed 48 hours ago. Can you tell me what's happening?" Weston looked at her with the same assessment he'd given her mother. Younger, he noted. Better dressed than expected. Confident in a way that was slightly irritating. "I've already spoken with your mother," Weston said. "I'm afraid the suite is experiencing is it occupied?" "A beat. There are some system issues that, Mr." She looked at his nameplate. "Weston. Is the presidential suite physically occupied by a guest right now?" Another beat. Longer. "There are availability constraints that." "I'll take that as a no," Nia said. Her voice was calm. Not warm, but not hostile. It was the voice of someone who had given briefings in rooms where the wrong answer had consequences. "So the room is empty and you're telling my mother, a platinum-tier prestige member with a confirmed, prepaid reservation, that it's unavailable. I've offered a complimentary deluxe king. Here's what I'd like you to do," Nia said. "I'd like you to bring up the prestige member record under Evelyn Beaumont-Osey and read me the tier and the number of stays in the past 36 months. Weston's jaw shifted. "Or I can call the Harrington corporate line," Nia continued. "I have the regional vice president's number, Dr. Alicia Drummond Finch. We've met at a Veterans Hospitality Partnership event." She was very enthusiastic about the program. I imagined she'd want to know about a platinum tier member being redirected to budget properties. Tara stopped pretending to sort the brochures. She was openly watching now. Weston smiled the way people smile when they realize they've underestimated a situation, but don't yet know how badly. I'll tell you what, Ms. Beaumont Osei. Let me make a call to our floor coordinator and see what we can do. Please, Nia said. I'll wait. He made the call. It took 3 minutes. The presidential suite had been unoccupied since Monday. There was no system error. The system had been functioning fine the entire time. Weston came back to the desk, looking like a man who had just found out the fire he started was bigger than he thought. It does appear the suite is available, he said carefully. I apologize for the confusion. I'll have your keys prepared. Thank you, Nia said. She did not say it warmly. She returned to her mother's chair, crouched beside her again, and said quietly, We have the suite. Evelyn Beaumont Osei nodded once. She picked up her bag. She stood the way she always stood, straight, unhurried, dignified. She said nothing more about it. But as they walked to the elevator, she reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand once, briefly, and that was enough. The problem was that Clifford Weston thought it was over. It wasn't over. Nia Beaumont Osei was not built for letting things go, when letting things go meant someone else would walk through those revolving doors next weekend and get the same treatment and not have a daughter who could make a phone call. She had spent her career fixing systems that were broken before the breaking showed up in the body count. This was no different. That evening, while her mother soaked in the presidential suite's clawfoot tub and ordered room service and finally genuinely relaxed, Nia sat at the suite's desk with her laptop open and began to document. She wrote a detailed account of what had occurred, time-stamped, with the confirmation number, the prestige membership tier, the exact language Weston had used, and a description of the junior staff member, Tara, who had witnessed the entire exchange. She attached the confirmation email, the payment receipt, and the screenshot of the prestige account page, showing her mother's platinum status and 14 stays across Harrington properties. She sent it to Dr. Alicia Drummond Finch, Regional VP, with a subject line that read, Incident Report, Harrington Grand Atlanta, Discriminatory Denial of Confirmed Reservation. Then she sent a copy to the Harrington Corporate Ethics line. Then she sent a copy to the Veterans Hospitality Partnership, of which her base commander was a board member. Then she went to her mother's room, put on the hotel bathrobe, ordered 2 slices of chocolate cake from room service, and watched an old movie with her mother until they both fell asleep in the king-size bed, like they used to when Nia was young. What Weston did not know, what he couldn't have known, because he had decided who Evelyn Beaumont Osei was before she opened her mouth, was that Evelyn was not simply a retired schoolteacher or a pleasant older woman visiting her daughter in Atlanta. Evelyn Beaumont Osei had spent 26 years as a licensed civil rights attorney with the Southeast Regional Office of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. She had argued 3 cases before the federal circuit and won 2 of them. She had a reputation in certain Atlanta legal circles that was the professional equivalent of a weather system. You knew when she was coming, and you cleared the path. She hadn't said any of that to Weston. She had simply stated her reservation number. Because she should not have needed to say more. Monday morning, Dr. Alicia Drummond Finch called the Harrington Grand at 7:43 a.m. The front desk transferred her to Weston. The call lasted 9 minutes. Tara, who was working the morning shift, could hear the general manager's voice change register 3 times during the call through his office door. First defensive, then explaining, then very quiet. At 9:15 a.m., a hotel security supervisor named Douglas Mercer was asked to pull the lobby camera footage from Sunday afternoon. He did. He reviewed it. He submitted a written summary to HR that afternoon that used the phrases clear differential treatment, guest redirected without cause, and behavior inconsistent with Harrington service standards. At 11 a.m., a Harrington corporate HR representative arrived at the property. Not virtually, not by phone, in person. Clifford Weston spent 45 minutes in a meeting with HR and the Regional V's Chief of Staff. He emerged from that meeting, looking like a man who had aged several years in under an hour. He was placed on administrative leave by 2:00 p.m. The official statement from Harrington Corporate, issued 3 days later, did not use his name, but it confirmed that a senior staff member at the Atlanta flagship property had been separated following an investigation into guest treatment, inconsistent with Harrington values and applicable civil rights standards. But the real weight of what happened came later, quietly, the way justice sometimes does when it's thorough instead of theatrical. Tara, full name Tara Ellsworth Banks, had submitted her own account to HR without being asked. She had documented the exchange in her personal notes. That same Sunday evening, before any complaint had been filed, because she had a gut feeling she would need it, and because she believed in documentation the way her grandmother had taught her to believe in receipts, her account corroborated every detail of Naya's report and added two that Naya hadn't been present for. The comment Weston had made to her, after Evelyn sat down, "She'll leave on her own in 20 minutes. They always do." And the fact that the suite floor coordinator had called the front desk at the time of the original check-in and confirmed availability, a call Weston had not disclosed and had actively dismissed. That second detail changed the nature of the investigation. It moved from a service complaint to a documented pattern of intentional obstruction. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund received a call from Evelyn Beaumont-Osie's former colleague on Wednesday. Not on Evelyn's behalf. Evelyn had not asked for that. It came because the colleague had heard about what happened, and because they had been tracking accommodation discrimination complaints in Atlanta for the better part of 2 years. And the Harrington Grand had come up twice before in informal reports that hadn't yet produced paperwork. Now there was paperwork. By the following month, Harrington Corporate had launched an internal audit of guest service records at 6 properties, cross-referencing complaint patterns against guest demographics. What the audit found was not comfortable reading. The Atlanta flagship property alone showed a measurable disparity in suite upgrade, denials, and system error complaints, correlating with guest racial demographics. 3 other properties showed similar patterns. None of it had been intentional at the corporate level, or so the corporate attorneys would later argue. But all of it had been operational at the property management level, sustained by a hiring and training culture that rewarded a very specific kind of gatekeeping. The audit results were not made public, but 3 regional GMs resigned. In the following quarter, a diversity and inclusion restructuring was announced, and the Veterans Hospitality Partnership, which had placed significant spending with Harrington Properties through military family travel programs, issued a public statement announcing a pause on all endorsed bookings pending review of the audit findings. That pause cost Harrington an estimated $2.3 million in contracted group reservations before the year ended. All of this because one man decided a woman in a navy blazer didn't belong in his lobby. At the Harrington Grand Atlanta, Tara Ellsworth Banks was promoted to front desk supervisor 8 weeks after the investigation concluded. She had not asked for it. She received a handwritten note from Dr. Drummond Finch that said, among other things, integrity is not a soft skill. It is the architecture of everything else. Tara kept the note in her work bag. On the Sunday after Naya flew back to Okinawa, Evelyn Beaumont-Osie went to church. She wore the same navy blazer, a string of pearls and low heels. She sat in the 3rd row, the pew she had occupied every Sunday for 31 years. After the service, over coffee in the fellowship hall, her pastor asked how her birthday weekend had been. "It started ugly," Evelyn said, wrapping both hands around her coffee cup, "but it finished right." The pastor nodded the way pastors nod when they understand that finished right is doing a lot of work in a sentence. "My daughter's a good woman," Evelyn said, almost to herself. "She learned from somewhere," the pastor said. Evelyn smiled, just slightly, the way she smiled when she agreed with something, but didn't need to say so out loud. There's a particular kind of person who looks at someone they've already dismissed and genuinely cannot see them. Clifford Weston looked at Evelyn Beaumont-Osie and saw an inconvenience. He saw an obstacle to the aesthetic he was paid to maintain. He made a calculation about her before she finished introducing herself, and that calculation cost him 11 years of career capital in less than 72 hours. He never considered that the woman he was redirecting to budget accommodations on Peachtree had argued civil rights law in federal court. He never considered that her daughter, in civilian clothes with a duffel bag, had spent the last 8 months in a command advisory role that required a security clearance he would not have been eligible for. He never considered any of this because he had already decided who they were, and people who do that tend to be very surprised by how wrong they turn out to be. What happened at the Harrington Grand wasn't a fluke or an accident or one bad employee on one bad day. It was a system operating exactly as it had been quietly permitted to operate, until the day it encountered a woman who had spent her life knowing exactly what to do when systems fail. She sat down. She waited. and then her daughter walked through the door. If this story of quiet, methodical justice stayed with you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that dignity doesn't expire and accountability doesn't always arrive loud. Hit the like button if you believe the Westins of the world need to answer for it, and leave a comment. What would you have done if that had been your mother sitting in that lobby chair?